So I am here today at Fort Ancient Earthworks and Nature Preserve. It is actually Ohio's one and only UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is shared with a few other Hopewell Era mounds in southern Ohio. But it's a very interesting place, and obviously it's the only ancient history I know of around here. So let's check it out. An important misconception about Fort Ancient that I got to get out of the way frequently has been mistaken for another Hopewell culture. The Fort Ancient people were not actually directly related to the Hopewell people, and also contrary to what the name would suggest, Fort Ancient was never actually a fort. They just believe this area was built up for ceremonial and religious use, and obviously they have some astrological alignments that they use to mark the summer solstice, which was probably used to figure out when a good time for planting or harvesting season was. So it did have plenty of use, but it was not actually meant as a military fort. So I am currently standing in the middle of the Moorehead Circle, which is like what basically used to be like an earthen mound here at Fort Ancient, and it used to have these lines that would line up to different astronomical events. So basically, the maximum moonrise to the north would be lined here, the summer moonrise would be here, and then the minimum moonrise in the south would be basically lined up about right here. Now, they discovered these lines by basically the color of dirt they were able to dig up in the circle over there. And basically the red dirt basically meant it was more fresh or more dug up, or basically different soils had basically gathered up there over the time. However, another marker that lets them know this wasn't just by chance is that this mound, when aligned with the circle over here, that lines up perfectly with where the summer solstice falls, which is on June 21st, which would be the height of summer, or what we generally call today the first day of summer. So this was more than just a chance coincidence. This was very much meant to mark the seasons. So I am currently at the middle fort section, which is the narrowest part of the Fort Ancient site. It's basically where the earthen mounds all basically scrunched together between the two larger areas to the north and to the south. What we have also here is known as Crescent Mound. When the early Europeans came here, they thought this was the strongest part of a fortification, but today we believe that Native Americans built these two crescents in order to basically do something for religious purposes. Whatever that is probably lost. This part of Fort Ancient was constructed somewhere between 1 AD and 200 AD, but obviously since there were no written records, all this information's been lost, so we really don't know what the significance of this area was, but Crescent Mounds is just a very unique place for the Fort Ancient site. So Fort Ancient is also a very popular site to hike, and this is the reason why. There's some absolutely breathtaking views here, and over here you can see basically all the Miami River Valley, and you can see so far into the distance. This is really a beautiful view. I mean, that has nothing to do with the ancient culture here, but still it is a good reason to come here. Now, there are so many earthworks here that a lot of these aren't even marked. I've just been walking along this really long one right here, and I mean, there's really no signs on it of anything other than just say, please don't stand or walk on it. But I think that's just kind of cool, that just how massive this site is that they don't even mark all the places of it. And I think another reason why it's kind of a nice place to come to is that there's just all these hiking trails here. And honestly, even beyond just the history, I mean, if that's not what you're interested in, this really is a beautiful place to take a hike. So I am currently at the museum on the Fort Ancient site. They actually have a bunch of displays and stuff within the actual building itself. Although the museum was more about just general Native American culture and what happened to Native Americans, well, at least before Columbus and a little bit after, it didn't really talk a ton about the site itself. Whereas I had noticed that back here, if you asked to go to one of the classrooms of the museum or tour their garden, I feel like there's a lot more of an in-depth look into what was actually here. So within the museum towards the back, there's an interactive center where you can just kind of see models and certainly farming equipment. People of Fort Ancient would use this hoe for gardening, which would have contained a shoulder blade of something like a deer, and they would use it to basically till the earth and so what. The Native Americans of Fort Ancient actually used a lot of clam shells. There actually are a lot of freshwater clams in the state of Ohio. I know that might surprise you. Usually you think of mollusks as being a sea thing, but there are plenty of river clams around here, and it's actually a very popular tool, and a lot of those have been found in the area. These are just some other farming tools that they found or maybe made replicas of in Fort Ancient, and anything of the Fort Ancient era would have been between 900 AD and 1600 AD. Now, there were two real eras to the Fort Ancient site. The first era was the Hopewell Culture, which existed basically before I think the year 200. They were kind of the first real civilization in North America. I mean, discounting what's south of the border in Mexico with the Aztecs. But this is a replica of a Hopewell hut. that would have existed here around the year 200. I think it's pretty cool they made this. It includes like a drying bed and like gourds that they would use and other tools they would have had at the time. Now, Fort Ancient also shares its UNESCO World Heritage status with two other sites, probably the most famous of which is the Serpent's Mound, which was built by the Hopewell. Although the Serpent's Mound wasn't inhabited about the same time as Fort Ancient was. Fort Ancient was actually inhabited well into the 1700s, and they believe that ultimately what brought down Fort Ancient would have had more to do with European diseases than just a natural decline in the civilization. So as I mentioned earlier, there are really two different eras at Fort Ancient. We believe that the second Fort Ancient culture, they originally descended from the Mississippians. I did a whole video on the most famous Mississippian city of Cahokia, which existed from about the same period of time, and of course was a lot bigger. But one of the big pieces of evidence we have is that they found chunky stones, which was a popular game among Mississippi Native Americans, and in fact a form of the game still exists today here at the site, which is a pretty strong indication that they at least had some contact with the Mississippians if they weren't founded by the Mississippians altogether. So also like the Mississippians at Cahokia, there was also a bunch of wood henges they found. Obviously none of them are still standing and they're all taken down, but I do have some footage from Cahokia about what a wood henge would have looked like. So around these trees you see behind me, there is a stone circle, and it's simply known as the Fort Ancient Stone Circle. This is probably another part of like a wood henge of some sort, or maybe there was another astronomical thing that was associated with it, but whatever it is, it's pretty much lost. And the sign for the stone circle basically just says Stone Circle. So I honestly don't know what the significance of this is, but I mean, it's just kind of interesting that they found this circle of stones and it's still here, and it probably had some religious importance. With the crescent mounds right over there, I mean, I'm sure it has something to do with those. So one of the reasons why I made this video is because I looked up information on Fort Ancient online and even other YouTube videos, and none of them really seem to give a lot of information about what exactly was here. Hopefully I cleared up some questions for you, but I mean, I would recommend checking this place out. I mean, even if you're just looking for a nice hike, it's a great place to come to. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope I will see you on the next one.